It was one of those corporate events that you don't look forward to but feel obligated to attend, like some unspoken test of loyalty. Emily had insisted we go together. "Everyone's bringing someone," she'd said with a casual tone that felt oddly rehearsed. At the time, I thought she just wanted to show me off. Now I'm not so sure. The party was being held in a boutique hotel, modern, stylish, trying a little too hard. The kind of place that served drinks with charred rosemary sprigs and had dim lighting that made you second-guess if you were supposed to enjoy yourself or reflect on your mistakes. I remember walking in and feeling instantly out of place. Everyone was smiling too widely, laughing too easily, like they were all on the same inside joke I'd never been let in on. Emily wore a deep green silk dress that caught the light like moving water. It clung in places I hadn't seen her emphasize in years. I remember thinking she looked stunning and unfamiliar. Her perfume was heavier than usual, darker, and it lingered when she passed by, like a trail that dared you to follow. I wasn't even 2 sips into my drink before I lost sight of her. When I finally found her across the room, she was dancing with someone. Brandon. I remembered him vaguely from her stories. Brandon from marketing. Brandon who's hilarious. Brandon who's new but already running the big account. He was tall, with that look some guys just have, put together in a way that doesn't try too hard but always lands. Their bodies moved in sync. His hands were on her waist, not in the polite, corporate-safe way, but in the way you touch someone you know in *mately. She laughed, leaned in closer, rested a hand on his shoulder like it belonged there. The way she looked at him, it wasn't how you look at a coworker. It wasn't even how she looked at me anymore. Then came the whispering. Him leaning in, lips brushing her ear. Her lips parting in a half-smile, like whatever he said lit something up inside her. It was subtle, but it was there, and I watched all of it. They slipped behind a column, one of those marble monstrosities holding up the pretense of elegance in the room. I waited, pretending not to care, sipping my drink and laughing at a joke someone near me had made. But my eyes kept drifting to that spot. 3 minutes, maybe 4. That's how long they were gone. When they came back, everything about them screamed reassembled. His shirt collar was misaligned, and she had a strand of hair stuck to her lip gloss that she hadn't noticed. Her cheeks were flushed in a way that didn't match the room's temperature. They looked reset, but not in a good way. More like actors walking back on stage after breaking character. When she spotted me watching, she didn't flinch. She just walked over like nothing had happened and planted a kiss on my cheek, quick and practiced. "Having fun?" she asked, her tone breezy. "Sure," I said. I wasn't. She dragged me into small talk with a couple she barely knew. The rest of the evening went by in a blur of handshakes, speeches, and weak jokes about office politics. I watched her laugh a little too hard at Brandon's stories across the room. Once, they made eye contact while I was standing right next to her. It was like I wasn't even there. I didn't say anything in the car ride home. The silence between us was comfortable for her. For me, it was screaming. Back at the house, she kicked off her heels and started removing her earrings in front of the hallway mirror. "God, my feet are *ling me," she said. "Why do I even wear those things?" "You tell me," I replied, not intending to sound as bitter as I did. She didn't acknowledge it. Instead, she went into the bathroom, shut the door, and ran the shower. I stood in the hallway, staring at the door, wondering why I suddenly felt like a stranger in my own home. When she came out 20 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, she looked surprised to see me still standing there. "What?" she asked, a hint of annoyance creeping in. "You and Brandon," I said. "You two seemed close." She blinked at me just for a second too long. "What? No. God, Mark, it was just a dance." "A dance?" I repeated. "Yes, a dance. At a work party. With people watching. You're seriously making something out of nothing." I didn't reply. She walked past me into the bedroom, shaking her head. "You're being weird." Maybe I was. Maybe I had imagined the way her hand lingered on his. Maybe I misread her smile, or the way she leaned into him, or how she disappeared behind that column and came back with a glow that didn't match the room's overhead lighting. But deep down, I knew I hadn't imagined any of it. The next morning, she acted like everything was fine. Made coffee, asked about my weekend plans, texted Brandon in front of me with the screen turned slightly away, something she'd never done before. When I asked who she was texting, she said it was just a group chat and rolled her eyes, as if the question itself was juvenile. That was the moment I realized we'd crossed into new territory. It wasn't just about Brandon. It wasn't even about the party. It was about how easily she lied now. About how convincing she had become. How natural. In the past, I might have let it go. Given her the benefit of the doubt. Told myself I was overthinking. But something about the way she deflected that night told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't just a dance. And she didn't want me to ask again. So I didn't. I just started paying attention. After that night, things didn't fall apart all at once. They frayed. Quietly. Like threads slipping loose from the edge of a sweater. At first, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I just felt it. A shift. Something off. You don't realize you're being replaced until the absence grows teeth. Emily was still Emily. But only in the way a photograph still shows a smile long after it stopped meaning anything. The morning after the party, I watched her walk around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Hair still damp from her shower, humming some pop song under her breath, scrolling through her phone with practiced ease. She didn't flinch when I walked in. Didn't pause or minimize the screen. Just flipped the phone face down when she set it on the counter. That was new. I didn't say anything. I just watched. That became a pattern. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. That I needed to let it go. That if I kept poking at shadows, I'd convince myself there was something lurking even when there wasn't. But paranoia usually lives in the absence of proof. This wasn't absence. This was subtraction, deliberate and practiced. The signs started to multiply, small, insignificant on their own. But together, they painted a trail. And every step led me further from the version of Emily I thought I knew. It started with the crunch time. Suddenly, her job was bleeding into every corner of her life. Late meetings, surprise deadlines, team dinners. She'd been at the company for 3 years, and not once had I heard her mention working past 6 p.m. Now she was coming home at 9, sometimes 10. No complaints, no venting, just vague explanations and an exhausted smile I didn't recognize. I remember one night in particular. It was a Thursday. She told me she'd be working late again. I offered to bring her dinner at the office. She paused. Not a long pause. Just enough. No, don't bother, she said. It's all chaos over here. You'd just be waiting around. I offered again gently. She declined again a little sharper. That was the first time I felt the wall go up. That weekend, I went to use her laptop to print something. She had left it open on the dining table. When I clicked the trackpad, the screen lit up, but instead of her desktop, I was greeted by a password prompt. Emily had never password protected her laptop before. I stood there staring at it, that little blinking field like a question mark I wasn't supposed to answer. Her phone had a new password too. She used to leave it unlocked all the time, on the nightstand, on the coffee table, in the bathroom while she showered. But now it was glued to her hand like an extra limb. If she left it unattended, it was screen down and always within reach. If I even glanced in its direction, she'd lock it instinctively, like a reflex. Then came the notifications. I'd be sitting next to her on the couch and I'd hear the buzz. She wouldn't look right away, just glance down, then shift slightly, tilting the screen away from me as she typed out replies with her thumbs close together, smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Sometimes I caught snippets, names I didn't recognize, messages popping up from places I knew she wasn't supposed to be. Capitol Row, Fairmont Heights, Old Town, neighborhoods filled with boutique hotels and cocktail bars. Places we never went, places that didn't make sense for crunch time. I started noticing the scents too. Emily had always worn light, floral fragrances. Subtle, clean. But one day she came home smelling completely different. It was heavier, muskier, an evening scent, expensive and calculated. I asked her about it and she shrugged. They discontinued my old one. Had to switch, she said. But that wasn't true. Her old bottle was still on the vanity, half full. I checked. Twice. There were new clothes too. Dresses I'd never seen before. Heels I knew she hadn't owned last month. Tags still on, tucked into bags from boutiques she used to roll her eyes at. She'd say they were for work dinners, for looking professional. But since when did looking professional involve backless tops and 4-inch stilettos? I didn't confront her. Not yet. I just watched. I started tracking time. She began running errands more often. Heading out for coffee with friends I hadn't heard her mention before. Picking up dry cleaning she suddenly forgot to bring home. Meetings that didn't show up on any calendar. Her work calendar, I noticed, had changed too. It used to be open, syncing across our devices, easy to glance at. But now it was private. Sections blocked out with vague labels like client call or project review. No location. No details. Then there were the cash withdrawals. Emily hadn't used cash for anything in years. We were a digital couple. Cards, apps, tap to pay. But I started seeing ATM withdrawals from our joint account. $60 here, $80 there. Always on the same days she had her work dinners. Always within a few miles of those same neighborhoods, Capitol Row, Fairmont Heights. And every time she came home late, she went straight for the shower. That, more than anything, started to break me. She'd walk in, toss her keys on the counter, smile like everything was fine, kiss me on the cheek, and disappear into the bathroom. Clothes in the hamper, phone on the charger, water running. 15 minutes later, she'd come out in sweats, wet hair, and smelling like soap, like a reset button had been pressed. No trace of the evening, no trace of anything. Once, just once, I tried to press. I asked how her meeting went. She froze for half a second, then launched into some vague description involving a new client, some presentation prep, and a sushi dinner that wasn't even that good. The problem was, she told me that same story the week before, word for word. That's when I knew. It wasn't just one thing. It never is. It was all of it. The late nights, the new password, the blocked calendar, the shifts in scent, in wardrobe, in excuses, the changing neighborhoods, the lies told with a smile. Every detail formed a shape, a shadow, a presence in the room that neither of us acknowledged. I wanted to believe I was wrong. God, I wanted it to be something else, anything else. Stress, burnout, a midlife drift. But you don't pull away from someone you love because of work. You don't hide parts of your life unless you're sharing them with someone else. And the worst part? She still laughed at my jokes. Still made coffee for both of us in the morning. Still told me good night. Like nothing was happening. Like she hadn't already started slipping away. So I did the only thing I could do. I watched. I listened. And I waited. Because sometimes the worst kind of truth doesn't come crashing in. Sometimes it tiptoes, piece by piece, until you look around and realize you're not standing in your life anymore. You're standing in the wreckage of it. There's a moment, if you've ever had your suspicions confirmed, when everything slows down. Not like in the movies, where dramatic music swells and your world crashes in all at once. No, it's quieter, numb, like your body goes on pause while your brain tries to understand that yes, this is real. This is happening. For me, that moment came on an ordinary Thursday. Nothing about that day screamed betrayal. The sky was overcast, the kind of dull gray that makes everything look washed out. Emily had left early that morning for a client brainstorm across town. I didn't ask for details. I'd stopped asking questions I didn't want dishonest answers to. Instead, I focused on work, made myself a sandwich for lunch, and tried not to wonder what she was really doing. The doorbell camera notification popped up just after 5 p.m. It was automatic. I get alerts every time there's motion by the front door. Normally, it's just packages, neighbors walking their dogs, or the wind setting off the sensor. But that day, I clicked the thumbnail out of boredom. And that's when I saw it. There she was, Emily, standing on the front step, framed in the wide-angle lens. But she wasn't alone. A silver sedan was idling by the curb, engine still running. She leaned in through the open passenger side window, one hand resting on the door. Her face was close to someone, too close. Then she leaned further, her head tilted, and she kissed him. It wasn't a quick goodbye. It wasn't a cheek peck or a friendly hug. It was a slow, confident kiss. The kind people share when they think no one's watching. Except I was. I didn't feel anything at first. Not anger, not heartbreak, just silence. My finger hovered over the screen, frozen, as if letting the video keep playing might somehow undo it. After the kiss, she lingered. I watched her rest her hand on his for a moment, say something, too quiet to hear, then laugh softly. Only then did she close the car door and walk up to our house. I rewound the clip and watched it again. And again. The doorbell cam had recorded the entire thing. A perfect 15-second clip that cut through every lie she told. That night, I said nothing. Emily came home like she always did, keys jingling, dropping her bag by the door, kicking off her heels like she was shedding some other version of herself. I sat on the couch, phone face down, trying to breathe evenly. She walked over, bent down to kiss me, and I turned my head slightly, not enough to make a scene, just enough to make her pause. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Tired." She accepted that answer without pushing. Maybe she was tired too. Tired of pretending, tired of balancing two lives, tired of walking the tightrope between guilt and desire. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. I honestly didn't know. She made dinner like nothing had happened. We ate quietly, watched a few episodes of some forgettable show. She laughed at all the right moments. I couldn't stop looking at her mouth. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I got out of bed and sat at the kitchen table. I opened the video again, played it, paused it, took a **T. There it was. Her face, illuminated by the car's dome light. Her lips against his hand touching hers. The truth, frozen in pixels. For days after, I didn't confront her. I walked around with the clip in my pocket like a live wire, unsure of when or how to use it. I think part of me was still waiting for her to confess, to slip up, to offer some hint that would let me ask the question I already knew the answer to. Instead, I started to investigate. I went through old footage from the doorbell camera. Most of it was nothing, but eventually I started finding patterns. The same silver sedan pulling up every so often. Same time window, mid-afternoon to early evening. Sometimes she'd walk outside and talk to the driver. Sometimes she'd come back smelling different. Lighter, sweeter. I started setting alerts. If the car showed up, I'd get a ping. I became my own surveillance system, not because I wanted to catch her, but because I already had, and now I needed to understand how deep it went. The next hit came on a Saturday. Emily had told me she was going to a networking brunch downtown. Said it would be just a couple of hours. That she might do some shopping after. Her voice was too casual, the kind of casual that comes from rehearsing. At 1:14 p.m. the camera recorded the sedan again. This time, she was wearing jeans and a navy blouse I didn't recognize. She got out of the car laughing, holding a paper cup of coffee in one hand, sunglasses perched on her head. She turned and waved before the car pulled away. That's when I knew it wasn't random. This wasn't a fling. This was routine. I sat with that footage for a while, trying to decide what it meant. It wasn't the kiss anymore, it was the ease, the comfort, the naturalness of the goodbye. You don't build that with someone overnight. Then came the message that broke the last of my denial. A friend of mine, Jared, had also been at the office party. We weren't especially close, but we'd known each other for years. That night, I got a DM from him. "Hey man, this might be out of line, but I figured you'd want to see this." Someone sent it to me after the party. Didn't want to assume anything, but yeah. Attached was a video. **T from someone's phone, probably during the tail end of the event. It was short, maybe 20 seconds. Grainy, but clear enough. It was that dance. Emily and Brandon. On the dance floor, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist. At first, it looked innocent enough, close dancing, sure, but not damning. But then she leaned into him, pressed her forehead to his. His hands slid lower. They moved as one, back swaying. Then, At the edge of the frame, they stepped behind a lighting rig, half-shadowed. And they kissed. The video ended there. But I didn't need more. Between the doorbell footage, the kisses, the shared looks, and the patterns in behavior, I had all the proof I could possibly need. She had cheated. Not emotionally. Not hypothetically. Not in some abstract, emotionally distant way. She had cheated. And she had done it more than once. The reality of it settled in like dust. Quiet. Undeniable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls or shatter glasses. What I felt wasn't rage. It was clarity. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I wasn't second-guessing myself. I wasn't looking for signs. I had them. All of them. Laid out like puzzle pieces that now fit together perfectly. That night, I watched her sleep. Not in a romantic way. Not out of longing. I watched her the way a person watches the tide come in, knowing the shoreline is about to change forever. She shifted under the blanket, unaware, peaceful. And I wondered how many times she'd laid next to me like that after being with him. How many times she'd kissed me goodnight with someone else's touch still on her skin. I didn't know what I was going to do next. Not exactly. But I knew this, whatever came after this moment, it would be mine. She had made her choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. After the kiss, after the dance, after the sedan, I stopped waiting for explanations. There was no need for words. I had evidence now. Pieces that didn't need interpretation, that couldn't be softened by emotion or spun into misunderstanding. But the moment I crossed that threshold from suspicion into certainty, something in me shifted. I didn't want apologies anymore. I wanted clarity. I wanted to understand how deep the betrayal went, how long it had been growing like a tumor under the surface of our life. So I stopped reacting and started documenting. Emily's laptop was the obvious place to start. She had always been careless about her devices at home, assuming that because I never snooped before, I never would. But now that I had reason, I waited for the moment. One night, after she fell asleep on the couch, half a glass of wine untouched on the coffee table, I carried her laptop to the kitchen. Quiet. Measured. The password took me 3 tries. The first was her birthday. Wrong. The second was our dog's name. Wrong. The third? Brandon 1. And just like that, I was in. The screen flickered to life, and for a moment I hesitated. Not because I was unsure, but because part of me feared what I'd find. There's a strange *Macy in discovering your partner's betrayal. You think the worst part is the act itself, but it's not. The worst part is learning how easily they lived inside the lie. Inside the Documents folder was a subfolder labeled Q3 Planning. Seemed innocuous enough. But inside that were 3 more folders, each named with dates. Specific weekends. When I opened them, I felt like the oxygen left the room. Photos. Hundreds of them. Emily in hotel rooms. By the pool. In robes. On balconies. Selfies of her and Brandon at breakfast. Coffee cups touching. His hand on her knee. One picture was taken in a mirror. A hotel bathroom, with her wrapped in a towel and him shirtless in the background, brushing his teeth. Domestic. Casual. Like this was their life. Not some secret tucked between meetings. And here's what crushed me. She looked happy. Not staged happy. Not curated for Instagram happy. Genuinely relaxed. Genuinely present. There was a softness in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. It hit me like a punch. Not because I wanted to be the one in the picture, but because I used to be. Before all this, I kept digging. Her browser history was clean. Too clean. But I checked the cache, and there it was, hotel booking sites, private browsing tabs, directions to hidden restaurants in other neighborhoods. But the biggest find came in her downloads folder. A zipped folder labeled Backup _ Brandon. Inside were exported message threads, *TS, logs, even audio notes. I opened one of the text files, and within seconds, I was staring into a digital timeline of their affair. They had it all mapped out. Parking garage codes, room numbers, times to meet, times to leave, excuses to feed me. There were conversations like, I'll say I'm working on the McPherson pitch again. He doesn't even ask anymore. I miss you already. That meeting today was torture without your hand on my knee. Thinking about that night at the Hilton. The way you looked at me while pretending you were still on the phone with Mark. You're wicked. Each line peeled away another layer of the version of her I thought I knew. I closed the laptop, stomach churning. But it didn't stop there. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I checked her phone. I'd watched her unlock it enough times to memorize the pattern. It wasn't about being sneaky anymore, it was about understanding the full scope. And what I found only added to the weight already pressing down on my chest. Hidden in a Notes app folder marked Work were entries labeled like meeting minutes. But they weren't meetings. They were plans. Budget breakdowns. Branding ideas. Bullet lists titled Wine Bar Charleston. It was a dream, apparently hers and Brandon's. Opening a small place in another city. A fresh start. She'd even mocked up a logo. They were planning a future together. Without me. In another folder, titled Ideas for Q4 Retreat, I found plane ticket confirmations booked under a disposable email address. Same last name. First name shortened. A nickname I had never heard her use for anyone. She had started creating a separate identity. Emails, bookings, even an alternate contact number saved under rental agent. All signs pointed to a trip scheduled for next month. A retreat she had already mentioned in passing, describing it as a leadership offsite. There was nothing professional about it. There was no team, just her and him. Everywhere I looked, I found more cracks, more holes in her stories. Receipts from hotels on dates when she was supposed to be working late. Charges on our joint card for high-end restaurants I hadn't heard of. Rideshare logs that began and ended far from any office building. All of it was right there, easy to find if you were finally willing to look. Then came the final nail. I remembered the video Jared had sent me, the dance at the party, the lighting rig, the kiss. That moment had been gnawing at me, replaying over and over in my head. Something about it still felt surreal. So I messaged him. Hey, you still have that clip? He replied almost immediately. Actually, I have the longer version. Want it? He sent it. This time, the video was nearly 2 minutes long. *T from a different angle. You could see more. Her hands gripping Brandon's shoulders, his arms sliding around her back. Then they slipped behind the rig. The lighting was low, but you could still make out their silhouettes. And they weren't just kissing. They were completely entwined. Her leg lifted around his hand at the small of her back, pulling her into him. The kiss was deep, possessive. It was the kind of kiss people share when they forget where they are, when they don't care who sees. They thought no one saw, but someone did. And now I had it. The moment she had reduced to just a dance was more *mate, more deliberate, more damning than any words could ever describe. I saved the video to an external drive. I saved everything. Photos, chats, hotel confirmations, GPS history, message threads, the wine bar plans, the receipts, the camera footage, all of it. I created a private cloud folder, encrypted and backed up. I even printed copies, hard copies, of the worst of it and placed them in a sealed envelope in my desk drawer. Not because I planned to confront her yet, but because if I was going to leave, I wanted to do it on my terms. With documentation, with control. That night, when she came home, she smiled, kissed me lightly on the cheek, asked how my day was. I told her it was fine. She started making dinner, turned on music, asked if I wanted wine. I watched her, like I was seeing her for the first time and for the last. Everything she did, every word she said, every gesture. It was rehearsed. A theater of normalcy. A cover story for the real life she was living just beyond my reach. But not beyond my sight anymore. I had all the proof I needed. And the thing about truth is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The morning after I uncovered everything, the pictures, the receipts, the plans, I half expected her to know. Like maybe she'd feel it, since the air had shifted, that the walls were starting to close in. But she didn't flinch, didn't change. In fact, she was more cheerful than usual, which made it worse. She greeted me with a smile and a kiss on the forehead as I sipped my coffee. Made you toast, she said, sliding a plate in front of me like we were still the same people in the same life. I looked down at the toast. Buttery, golden, perfectly cut in halves, the way she knew I liked it. I stared at it the way you might look at something left behind by someone who's already gone. I didn't say a word. She sat across from me, tucking her hair behind one ear. Her makeup was soft, understated, domestic. There was something mechanical about the way she buttered her own toast, like muscle memory carrying her through the motions. She didn't notice I hadn't eaten a bite. Or maybe she did and just pretended not to. That was how things started to go. A performance. A deliberate display of normal. She became overly affectionate. Small things, but not subtle. Rubbing my back while I did the dishes, calling me babe more often, laughing too hard at jokes I didn't finish. She asked about my day, even made a point of putting her phone down during dinner. That used to be a fight between us. Now she volunteered it. She was playing a role. The loving wife. But I wasn't playing anymore. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I was recording everything. Every message, every schedule entry, every receipt. Not for revenge. Not even to confront her. I wasn't after some screaming match or a dramatic meltdown in the living room. I just wanted to walk away clean, quiet, with dignity intact and facts on my side. So I started cataloging. I backed up her chat logs, *TS, exports, even voice memos when I found them. I downloaded every hotel receipt, rideshare trip, calendar entry, email confirmation. I labeled the folders by date, creating a timeline that made her version of reality impossible to defend. I started checking her location logs. You'd be surprised what syncs between devices when you share Wi-Fi. And just like that, I had maps, timestamps, pins in cities she never told me she visited. All while she played the part of the content committed wife. She started packing my lunch again. Said she missed doing that. Even left notes, handwritten ones. Cute phrases like, "You got this," or "thinking of you." The kind of things people post on Pinterest under healthy marriage goals. But none of it reached me. None of it felt real. Because I knew. I knew what she was doing. This was control disguised as kindness. A strategy, not a gesture. Somewhere deep down, she must have sensed that things were unraveling. Maybe she caught a look in my eye or a pause that didn't used to be there. Or maybe Brandon was pulling back. Maybe her fantasy of starting a life with him was cracking under pressure. Whatever the reason, she was retreating not into guilt but into performance. The thing about liars is, when they sense the floor shifting, they don't confess. They distract. So while she leaned into sweetness, I leaned into silence. I kept my answers short. I mirrored her small talk. I never started arguments, never accused. I gave her nothing to react to, and that drove her nuts. The more normal I acted, the more desperate she became to overcompensate. One night, she made a reservation at a place we used to go to on anniversaries. Casual, like it was just an idea that popped into her head. "I thought it'd be nice," she said. "Just us. We haven't done anything in a while." She wore a dress I hadn't seen in years. Navy blue, elegant, simple. I'd always loved her in it. She knew that. We sat at a corner table, candles flickering between us. She ordered my drink without asking, reached across the table for my hand, smiled the whole time, and I played along. I laughed when she told stories, nodded as she talked about her coworkers, as if I didn't already know what some of them looked like half-dressed in a hotel room. I even complimented her dress. She squeezed my hand. That was the night I realized how deeply she believed the illusion could still work. After dessert, as we walked to the car, she looped her arm through mine and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I missed this," she whispered. I didn't reply, because I hadn't missed it. I'd missed her, the real her. But that person didn't exist anymore, not in the way I needed. She had become two people, and neither of them knew who I was anymore. Later that week, I moved the evidence off-site, created a private cloud folder, encrypted it, and sent a backup to a secure drive I stashed at my brother's place. I told him it was for work, something sensitive. He didn't question it. I didn't want to put him in the middle of it until I was ready. I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Early in the morning before work. Sat in a leather chair while she flipped through notes I'd emailed her in advance. She was efficient. Focused. "You have more than enough," she said, skimming through the documentation. "This isn't a case of doubt. This is a case of fact." That sentence stayed with me. A case of fact. I began preparing contingencies. I changed passwords. Set up two-factor authentication for everything tied to my name. Opened a personal account in a bank she didn't use. Transferred small amounts at a time. Nothing suspicious, nothing sudden. I canceled automatic payments from our shared card. Replaced household memberships under my name. One piece at a time, I began removing myself from the shared version of our life. At home, she started bringing up the idea of a vacation. Just the two of us. A reconnect trip, she called it. "We could do the coast," she said one night while brushing her teeth. "Remember that B&B in Monterey? You always slept so well there." She wanted to take me somewhere scenic. To reset. Maybe to test if the spell could still work. But it was too late for spells. She started sending me memes again. Articles about relationships. Even asked one night if I'd be open to counseling, not in a serious way, but in that breezy, "I saw this on Instagram" kind of tone. I didn't take the bait. I smiled. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't want to fight. I wanted distance. Legally. Emotionally. Logistically. One night, I copied the full timeline I had built into a printed binder. Labeled, indexed, tabbed by category, photos, messages, financials, calendar entries, statements. I didn't plan to hand it to her. Not yet. But it existed. A physical, undeniable record of the reality she tried to perform her way out of. And here's the cruelest part of it all. Some nights, she would fall asleep on the couch, curled against my side, like nothing was wrong, like I was still hers. I'd sit there, awake, while she breathed slowly and peacefully, and I'd wonder if part of her believed she could return to the version of our life that came before Brandon. But even if she wanted to, she couldn't, because I had seen the backstage. I had seen the pages of the script, and no matter how perfect the act was, the audience in me was done clapping. In the documents I gathered, I found something new: company policies,